is up, guys? It's MugenLord here, and today we're going to talk about SEGA and their canceled game. I mean, the game was canceled even before it even launched. We saw a trailer of it about a year and a half, or maybe just a year ago, and the game never seen the light of day, especially after with the experience with the beta and the many decisions that they decided to go with, and it got a little bit of ESG as far as character designs are concerned with this game. So, what is that game? But before we dive into it, make sure to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell for more gaming content here on this channel. So, before we dive into it, so let's check this out. The name of the game is called Hyenas. Now, Hyenas was a game that didn't look like something that Sega would make. It was, you can tell that it was probably an American or a Western division of Sega that decided to go with this game because it just didn't have any I guess you would say Sega flair to it. It looked like another generic hero shooter that they wanted to pretty much try to cash in on, but throw in some little Sega nuggets in there or little cameos in there to say, hey, this is our stamp of approval, or this is the Sega stamp that we're putting on this brand. So we're going to go over to Kotaku because they had a news article explaining or giving us an inkling to what happened behind the scenes with this canceled project called Hyenas. So we're going to dive into it right now. So apparently reports say that Sega just canceled its most expensive game ever. Now I didn't know that. This is one of their most expensive games. So according to some devs who worked on Hyenas, the game was a pricey mess behind the scenes. We about to find out. We are about to find out. So, a new claims that Sega recently canceled online extraction shooter. So this is an extraction shooter similar to what we're supposed to get with Sony and Bungie's game called Marathon, which was an old IP done in the past, but they wanted to bring it back and make it an extraction shooter. So it seemed like this might be the new wave that they're trying to catch on with, where we had the looter shooters, we have the battle royales, and now we're trying to do this whole extraction shooter, and then of course hero shooters on top of that. So Hyenas was the publisher's most expensive game production ever, beating out even Sega's AM2's historically pricey adventure game Shenmue, which famously cost $7 million in turn of the century dollars to develop. So announced in June 2022. Yes, so it was last year. That's what I remember. I just couldn't remember what date it was when this game was announced. Hyena was being developed by Total War and Alien Isolation dev Creative Assembly. It was described as a sci-fi space piracy multiplayer first-person shooter, pitting teams of players against both each other and NPCs as they fought to steal valuable items and pieces of pop culture. On September 28th, just 17 days after the most recent Hyenas beta, Sega canceled the shooter before its official launch. According to developers who worked on it, the ill-fated project, Hyenas was the single most expensive video game Sega has ever made. And this is something that these developers, and I think this was getting crazy with game development, AAA titles, or just gaming in general, is that they're sinking in a lot of money into projects that they don't even know that it's going to work. More specifically, extraction shooter. Like, do people want an extraction shooter? Do people want it? And then we have to think about the decisions that's going into it as far as the ESG, adding in all these diverse and inclusiveness to it, and now they have to take that under consideration of how the audience is going to respond to that. On top of that, and then the other thing is the game even going to be fun? How are they going to handle the monetization? This is the thing that these companies need to consider, especially that games as a service is starting to be, the market is definitely inflated and is too jam-packed with a lot of these games. So is it worth putting all this money into it and you're not sure that this game is even going to survive the current climate of live service games? So, as I digress, so in October 4 report from VGC, backed up by a YouTuber with inside knowledge of Creative Assembly, the developers explained that the reason the upcoming shooter was canned came down to the lack of direction and the engine change midway through development that caused a lot of headaches. And that's another thing about engines, man. When developing games, man, engines are very important. That's why a lot of developers are now starting to gravitate towards the Unreal Engine because it's an engine that's easy to modify, easy to work with any type of concepts or game designs that you have, and it's cost effective. Even though that, of course, Unreal, in Epic Games, they definitely get a portion of whatever they make when you license out their engine. But engines are very expensive, and they're really hard to pretty much utilize because you gotta make sure that the engine can work for all forms of gameplay, and this which is the reason why a lot of developers would like to create their own engine, because they can keep everything in-house, and all the money, they don't have to split it to the company that licenses it out to them. They can keep everything in-house. But when you're developing a game and games doesn't work out and you have to switch the engine on top of that, that means it costs a lot to be able to get everybody on board. Then you probably have to teach the team how to understand and work the engine, which also costs a lot of headaches. And then when you find out that the game doesn't really respond well to the engine, then you're going to have a nightmare on your hands. So one anonymous developers, as we continue, we asked what went wrong, cited multiple reasons, including a total lack of direction, and the leadership was asleep at the wheel. That same dev also claimed an engine change partway through the process didn't help the team working on the game. According to the report, Hyenas was greenlit in effort by Creative Assembly management team to create a console shooter with broad appeal. And this is what we're talking about again, a broad appeal. And we already know what broad appeal means, man. Broad appeal means a whole lot of things. And you can tell by the designs of these characters. Oh my god, these characters look hideous. You can tell ESG was just written all over it. So this was already going to turn off a good portion of the audience who's sick of the nonsense when it comes to the creation and the decisions that they're doing with these games, especially with the character designs. So after that, Kotaku has contacted Sega for more information. It's believed that Hyenas was an example of one of Sega's so-called super games and had a budget to match with a developer who worked on the game, telling VGC it was Sega's biggest budget game ever. Towards the end, there were a couple of people from Sega Japan more or less permanently at the UK office, claimed the anonymous developer. This has never happened the whole time I worked at CA. They occasionally come to visit and check how a game was looking, but as I said previously, generally hands off. While Hyenas was originally planned to be released as a premium title before it was killed, it had become a free-to-play shooter. And here we go, free-to-play. And you know, like I said, when you have the free-to-play model, if done right, can be a lucrative business, and it can satisfy the developers and also the gamer base. But most free-to-play never really nailed this formula down too well, especially with the whole monetization model that they have going on with most of these games. So, however, after multiple online closed beta tests for the game, sources speaking to VGC claimed that Sega wasn't happy with the expensive shooter's progress, and that led to its cancellation in late September. And that's pretty much it for this article right here. But Hyenas is another one of these looter shooters or extraction shooters or these live service games that's pretty much meeting the axe or being delayed, because we already have Sony making during their quarterly, I guess you say, reports, they're announcing that a lot of their live service games are being delayed at past 2025, and Marathon is one of those games. And then we also look at Naughty Dog, what they're doing with The Last of Us, that they have going on, The Last of Us factions that they're trying to produce. That's also on an indefinite, of course, delay or whatever they have going on behind the scenes. And it appears that a lot of these games are being tested for quality purposes, and they're really not meeting the standard. They're not up to snuff. And this is what happens where you start to sink a lot of money into a game that you're trying to be able to bleed out your fan base. You're trying to bleed out consumers and trying to have these games last for the next 4 to 5 years. I miss the days where you just bought a game, that was it. Of course, DLC is never going anywhere. But when you look at games like or studios like From Software, where they make a fully complete packaged game that you can enjoy from beginning to end without a DLC near or expansion anytime soon coming, you're still able to get that fun experience, and you have that replay value that you just keep coming back and keep coming back for more and more. I think they have done a good job with Monster Hunter, what Capcom had done with Monster Hunter, that you can constantly keep coming back playing Monster Hunter over and over again. These are the type of games that people would constantly play and put money down if there is reasonable microtransaction, or if there are expansion packs that's going to be coming down the line for these kind of games. But we're starting to see a lot of these developers is cutting these games, delaying these games, and say, you know what, let's just sink the whole thing. This is not going to work out. And I just think that we need to start pivoting away from these live service games, because with live service games, there's only but so many of them that you can invest your time in, because live service games require your time. They require your money, and you can't keep up with a lot of them, especially when you have these battle passes, when you have to log in to be able to get some of the perks for logging in. How many can you invest in? And if you're already playing a live service game that is actually doing everything and servicing you just right, then why should I go over to any of these other live services games where I'm getting everything at this one stop? So Hyenas is another victim of, trying to overachieve or not having a sense of direction. And looking at Hyenas, this game didn't even appeal to me to begin with. Just because you throw Sonic in the trailer and stuff like that, or anything that's remotely familiar with the Sega IP, the property, and its merchandise and stuff like that, it's not going to sell the game. This did not look like a Sega game at all. Sega is the publisher. I know that the Creative Assembly is the ones that's working on it, but Sega, no. This was definitely going to be a miss, and this was going to be a nightmare. And I think that this was the smart thing to do before they was going to lose everything, and especially another studios would have to start cutting off and cutting jobs because of this failure. So that pretty much wraps up this video. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell for more gaming content here on this channel, because I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. Like, Hyenas, do you think this was going to be successful? Do you think that Sega was going to have something great on their hands, or do you think this is something that Sega seen as a cash grab, that they thought they was going to do something well, but after seeing it, they said, you know what, nah guys, this is not it? So definitely hear your thoughts. So this is MugenLord, sign off. I'll see you Game Fiends later. Peace out. It looks like you reached the end of the video. Well, while you're at it, check out some of my other discussion videos by clicking on the annotations below, and don't forget to follow me on other social media platforms to stay up to date with future content. Signing off.